Truth Frequency Radio Network. KTFRN. Worldwide.
Welcome, Shadowland Voyagers. In the spirit of sovereignty and self-empowerment, we invite you to journey with us into the Shadowland. Let's rediscover, reclaim, and integrate the fragmented aspects of our individual and collectively held consciousness, realize true freedom, and restore authentic expression. Could it be the only way out is through the Shadowland? Welcome, Shadowland Voyagers. This is Sienna, and this is episode 27, The Joy of Living from Presence with Mandi Solk. I'm here with my delightful Voyagettes, Christina Grant. Good evening, Christina.
Good evening, everyone.
And Elizabeth Hanscom. Good evening, Elizabeth.
Good evening, everyone.
All right. Mandi Solk lives in the town of Huddersfield. Excuse me, Mandi. Tell me if I've totally ruined that. Yorkshire, England, United Kingdom. She teaches self-inquiry based on the teachings of Ramana Maharshi and following in the footsteps of Papaji and Mooji, and is dedicated to guiding all who are drawn to truth, to the recognition of who they truly are. That is free right now. She's written a book, The Joy of No Self, endorsed by Scott Kilby and Jeff Foster, and she will soon be working on another work focusing on self-inquiry. Mandi came to non-duality self-inquiry through many paths before, as she describes, seeing the light. Good evening, Mandi. Welcome to Shadowland Voyagers. We are so
thank you.
Excited for you to be here with us tonight. We really resonate with your path and your information. And this is show 27. We've gone down many roads in exploring how to be authentic human beings, be balanced, live in harmony and connection with the life force, and doing a lot of shadow work, exploring all aspects of shadow work. And we fully understand that there is a balance between the joy and the darkness, the light and the darkness. Your path, I feel, is really important for our listeners and for ourselves, for each one of us, to understand. You have a very unique perspective. You've gone through a long, long journey, it seems, to arrive at it. And so this show is normally just very relaxed. We're the three Voyagettes. We just try to hold a very loving and casual field to dive into your path, your journey, and your perspective. So let's everybody take a few deep breaths and launch into episode 27. So I would like to start with the first question. Mandi, would you share with our listeners your near-death experience, something about that, whatever you feel to share, and what you glean from that? I know that's the beginning point, but I think it's important our listeners understand that.
Oh, thank you, Sienna. What happened was that I was riding a motorbike, and I was going down a road, and as I was going down this road past some shops, I saw a lady get into her car and just start it off without looking in the mirror looking anywhere. And I just knew, even though I was driving slowly, that we were going to collide. And I suddenly saw that I was going to die, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. And when I saw that there was nothing I could do about it, something just said, let go, just let go. So I let go of the handlebars and didn't even attempt to do anything, because I saw that it was impossible. So in that moment of letting go, there was just a complete relief and a sort of a feeling that it was going to be taken care of from here. And this was all in a split second. And the moment of impact, I didn't even know about it. I had the feeling that I was rising up, and as I was rising upwards, I could see down below. I could see all the people and all the shops and all the buildings and trees and everything, but I could see through them. And as I started to realize that everything that I'd taken to be so real was actually dreamlike and ethereal and see-through, I started to really laugh, because I just realized, gosh, I had taken this life to be so seriously, and all the time it was just a dream, it's just an illusion. And I also had some quite funny thoughts like, oh, thank goodness I don't need to finish with that boyfriend. And I thought, oh, I don't have to worry about my overdraft anymore. And then as I went up, there was like a sort of a green light around everything, and it was like I was in a forest, and there were large columns that looked a bit like trees, but they weren't trees, and in each column there was a door, and I just knew that behind each door there was just something wonderful and fantastic and so loving. So I was just about to try one of these doors when I woke up and landed on the ground. Now, when I woke up, apparently I'd been out for a while and been declared dead. Pulse had stopped and everything. And the motorbike was a complete write-off, and so was the car. And I'd been pulled from one end of the car out through the screen at the front, the windscreen, and everything was just in pieces. And there was a crowd around me. But everybody expected me to be dead, and I was taken to hospital. I didn't even have any whiplash from the, no neck ache. I didn't have any bruising. I didn't have a cut or any shock or anything.
Nothing? That's very
nothing,
extraordinary.
Absolutely nothing. And I think, looking back, that what happens is that sometimes when people have these great crashes and impacts and things, sometimes if you can just let go when you see that there's nothing you can do to save yourself, in that letting go, you're allowing that loving force, God, which is what you are anyway, but it can get in and it takes over and it takes you out of the situation. You know how when we just drop attachment to things, something else takes over. We can be taken out of situations of danger, or things happen. It's all with this letting go. That's really was one of the biggest lessons for me, you see, out of that experience. And then I completely lost all fear of death and really saw that didn't exist. There was no death. And since then there'd been a few other death experiences. You must think I'm very careless.
No, not at all. A way shower for the rest of us. You had the bravery to write that into your spirit's journey here. And we need to hear about these things because, of course, the fear of death is a huge thing for all of humanity, and on the verge of facing so many things that we will in our lifetime. We learn from people like you who threw yourself into these experiences. So please do tell us about them.
Yeah. But the one where I died on the operating table, that was when I was in my 20s, because I was having late 20s. I was having a tonsillectomy. I was having my tonsils out, and it was supposed to be very straightforward, but I'd had some trouble with my tonsils before, so I'd had some other operations, and this meant that my blood was very I don't know, it was thick or dehydrated or something. Anyway, I died in that operation, and I rose above the operating table, and I could see it was quite funny really, because the anaesthetist was a very big, tall Scottish man with red hair called MacTavish, typical Scottish name, and the surgeon was a lovely man, a very little man, an Indian man called Mr. Gandhi. And Mr. Gandhi was saying, "Oh my God, I've lost a patient. I've lost a patient for a tonsillectomy. I've never had this happen before." And Mr. MacTavish, this big man, put his hands on his shoulders and said, "Don't worry, Mr. Gandhi, we'll get her back somehow." And I'm above the whole scene, floating above there, saying, "I'm here, I'm here." And so I just thought, oh, I'll leave them to it, and and I just really saw that consciousness just goes on, and that they're really, and again, this seeing that there is no death state at all. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital room and was and that was that, alive. But I think the main thing is that although I've had these experiences, what I've really found through doing self-inquiry is that they're totally not necessary. It doesn't matter whether you've had these experiences or not. I know people worry about this, and they say things, well, I haven't had the big car crash, I haven't had the big awakening, so does that mean I'll never see the truth of what I am? And, absolutely not. It's totally unimportant, really. I wouldn't even say that those experiences started me on the path, because just from being a little girl and sort of finding life very challenging in my family, I just thought there must be something better than my family, So, I was always looking to God, really, and to know what that was, and that was what started my path of looking. But in self-inquiry, it's the direct experience of looking. When we're a seeker, we're always seeking outside ourselves. We're seeking for the teacher that will say the exact sentence that we need to hear that will do it, and that's the thing that will do it, or the next book, or the next video, or the next therapy, or the next meditation practice. And this is outward looking. And when I started to do self-inquiry, I saw that I stopped being a seeker when I started to be a looker. And when I'm a looker, I'm looking at what is already there. When I'm a seeker, I'm seeking for something outside of myself. And of course, that can't possibly exist, because what we are, we see through the direct experience of trying to look for ourselves, and we never find ourselves. There's just empty spaciousness. Well, it's kind of empty and full at the same time.
Mandi, could I step back a little bit and ask you a little bit about your childhood? Because do you believe that we engineer our childhoods to create the kinds of experiences that move us spiritually forward? And if so, what did you pick? I would be very interested, if you feel it's relevant, to talk a little bit about how you got launched on a spiritual quest of self-inquiry as a small child, in a way, without maybe having those words at that time. Because it does feel like you've done this right from the beginning almost.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I just can't say about whether we pick this or we don't. I don't have a belief about that either way. I mean, I just don't know. The more I'm alive, the more I realise I don't know, and I have very few opinions about these things. But
yeah, and I didn't mean to necessarily.
Yeah.
I just thought that actually some real life experience, what you went through, could be people could relate to it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know what you mean. I agree with that because, I mean, I think really the majority of people who become seekers have had very, you know, they've been unhappy at some point, and that's our greatest blessing, isn't it? You know, really. I think it was just that my family, my father was a quite successful businessman, so he was sort of not there most of the time, and when he was there, he was just sort of emotionally absent. And my mother, she'd been born in London, and she lived quite a high life. She was quite a wild woman. She used to drive a 1000cc Harley Davidson motorbike round the wall of death twice a night and come out through a ring of fire just for kicks. This was my mother, and wow. She lived a high life, but then she fell in love with my father, who lived about 300 miles away in a provincial town called Leeds, and life was very, very different. So it took her quite a while to, you know, come to terms with that. Anyway, she built a life for herself, doing sort of welfare work and social. Well, she had 2 children first, you see. But they were 5 and 7 years older than me. And then she got her life together and made friends and got this wonderful social life. And then I was born, and I think it was probably a bit of an accident. And I think she, you know, possibly resented it a bit. I don't blame her at all, but because she'd got her life going, and then suddenly she had to, you know, because it was the 50s, she was expected to stay home with the kid, you see. So she didn't really enjoy that, and she wasn't very warm or loving, and she could be quite strict. And my sister and brother were very, very, very difficult, very aggressive and very hard. So basically that wasn't their fault either. It was just a hard family to be born into, and I was a bit of a softie, really. So I found it very difficult to be in that family. And if you shed a tear, that, you know, somebody would say, "Oh, don't be so dramatic." So, and you didn't, you know, I didn't get hugs or any of that sort of thing, you know. And so I think that made me look very hard from being a little girl to try and find out what God was like, because basically I was looking for a father-mother kind of figure. And so like a lot of little girls, I sort of looked to fairies and magic and all that kind of thing, and very much to God. So as soon as I sort of got to be a teenager, I kind of joined the God Squad, which is people that were very, very religious and in a sort of you know, overtly Christian way, which was fine, and I did that for a while, but that didn't fit. It didn't fit right for me, and that just started a path of looking for something beyond that which seemed to be the case. I couldn't believe that love was really my experience of what my family was, you see, Sienna. So that began a whole lifetime of
and you were such a loving being. I can sense into your energy and feel that you were just a very soft, sweet, and so the contrast was really untenable and forced you to, because it just wouldn't have made any sense to your heart at all to be living in a world like that. So, and of course, this is what happens to so many of us, and then religion does gobble up so many souls in that process. It's so interesting, though, that you finally did find a deep a spiritual connection to divine intelligence. I don't know if you want to talk about that. What happened with religion and you before we get into...
Oh, you're so lovely. Thank you. I did feel to be quite a loving child, and I couldn't quite work out going on with the rest of them. But religion, and look, when your family is calling, the next thing growing up is another kind of family. And I think that when you're younger, the idea of religion and going to somewhere where people meet and they all love each other, and there are rules and things, when you think very appealing, you see, the very thing, it's like that's appealing when you're younger, isn't so appealing when you're older and really think that more independent and don't need the family structure so much. But when I was 16 and in early 20s, the idea of a leap of people that could replace family was what was so tempting you. And I think that's really why religion and all its rules and dogmas, isn't it? Because the safety net in all of that.
Yes, and when we haven't had this our whole life, we are crippled even from maturing, and a huge piece, contact, is missing. And we're really broken at that and have to find, and we called opium, the medicine, be that way. We're just and absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. What happened was, as I'm sure many people have found as they keep going from one thing to another, is that each religion seemed to be so constricted. Then you look for something that's not quite so full of rules. So, the very, very sort of Christian one, and I'm just trying to think of the name, like evangelicalism. I've forgotten, sort of back, it was all that kind of, there's a lot of people on that kind of thing, and it did seem, it was very sort of seductive in a way.
The singing is so wonderful. Yeah.
All of that, and everybody's so loving and friendly. But I started to realize that the way that they everybody talks about God as something outside themselves, as though there's them and God, and that the idea of God is like some superhuman. But then if you make God superhuman, it can also be seen to fail and be a great disappointment, can't it? It's like, if we give God human characteristics, then God is the first person or being that we blame if things go wrong. And I kind of didn't like that aspect of God as something outside ourselves. So after I'd been involved in all that sort of thing, and there was it was like almost over emotional to the point of sickly sentimentality. I do think I'm a warm and loving person, but I don't like it when it goes the other way, because it's not balanced then either, is it? When it's kind of overly sweet,
Right.
And and I just found it just over the top, really, the way people sort of talked about God. So I'd had enough of that. And then I got into more of the Eastern things, you see. Like I love the kind of coolness of Zen and Taoism and just the pure wisdom of the Eastern religions. And it just seemed just right, and I got and then I got into Buddhism. So the first type of Buddhism, there was two types. I've forgotten the name of them. I know that the second type was the one that Tina Turner got into, which is Japanese Buddhism, where they say Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and everything. That was the second one.
Well, you were into Vipassana as well?
The Vipassana. Well, that was just something that I did. I went on one of these 10-day silent retreats and did the Vipassana meditation, but then I continued to do that, every day for quite a long time. And all these things started to be very, very useful in turning upside down what your idea was of you and what God was. So that was really great. And that's when I started to see that what God is life itself, love itself. God is hidden in absolutely everything and is everything and is oneself, And
is that what Buddhism teaches? Because some of our listeners may have never really studied Buddhism to know really what the core of that is, what resonated with you, and then what you moved beyond. I know later in the journey you moved into another realm altogether. So is that philosophy that, what is the basic core of Buddhism in your experience?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because do you know what? I need to be reined in, because I was going ahead then, wasn't I? In Buddhism, in fact, God isn't really talked about, or I don't think it's really believed in. But Buddhism is really the Buddha's enlightenment is seeing beyond the appearance of things. It's seeing beyond the idea that everything that we take to be so real is real, seeing beyond the illusion of a separate self. So it is a non-dual way of looking at the world. That's what Buddha's message was. It's just that what happens is, in all these different schools of religions, people translate it into so many different ways. And one of the Buddhism sects that I was involved in, they spent all their time sort of worshipping all these different deities, and I completely got totally confused with what the message of Buddha actually was. And there was so much worshipping of people and ranks and all these deities that I just left that one in the end, because I thought, well, Buddha's message isn't this. I'm sure it isn't this, because the simple, because Buddha, in just as the same as Christ, what we're talking about here is pure consciousness. And when we talk about freedom and liberation, which is what enlightenment is all about, we're just seeing beyond we're seeing beyond the world of form and separation, and that's what happened to Buddha, and that's what happened to Jesus. This is pure Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, the clear seeing that life is everything. And literally, when it says in him we move and have our being, we are it. We are both the film screen where life happens and the screen and the projector all at once. But I keep moving on from it because it's been such a while since I've been involved in Buddhism, and my whole life is really is being about seeing beyond the dual nature, the dual appearance of everything. That makes sense.
Well, no, it totally does. And would you agree that most of these religions most of these great spiritual teachers, people who had direct experience of their divinity, of who they really are, and tried to show the way, they became figureheads but were co-opted by a hierarchical dominator culture that then used this to really enslave people and create an authoritarian structure that appeared to be a path of enlightenment, but really seems more a path of slavery, at least from the appearance of things as I perceive it. It feels
absolutely
like, oh, yeah,
yes. I mean, the rules, in every one of these religions that I was involved in, the amount of rules and rituals and things that you had to remember, and also all of them have this kind of rather, dare I say, Catholic way of guilt. It's not just the Catholics that lay on guilt. It's it's every single religion that I've been involved in, whether it's Judaism or Buddhism.
Well, they really are like fingers on the hand of the same situation. Yes, and underneath there's this sense that of very disempowering, a very less than.
Absolutely, and the things, I mean, I had a conversation with somebody the other week about, we were laughing about all the different punishments that were supposed to happen if you left that particular religion. So if you leave Catholicism, you're doomed to brimstone and fire. Christian, you know, if you come away from that, life's going to just be ruined and everything's going to be awful. If there was a good one with the Japanese Buddhism. If you decided to leave that, your head could be split in many different ways. It would, and I've never known such guilt laying on as all these religions, you know, and. I was very involved with Christian Science for a very long time, and the reason was Christian Science, actually, I have a very big respect for that, because in a way it's the closest religion to talking about if non-dual seeing, because they don't really pay any attention, you know, to the body. It's always seeing beyond that. Everything, that life is all in all, that God is all in all. And they've got a very non-dual way of seeing things. It's just that, again, there was just a lot of rules and regulations. I think the main thing was that in all these religions is this emphasis on trying to be a good person. And I just want to talk about this for a minute, because
Sure.
it really does cause an awful lot of guilt in people if, you know, if they're thinking any bad things, or people are constantly up against themselves. And really, if we really understand the mind, what it is it's just continuous thoughts arising randomly. If you were to look through an electron microscope, you would see that thought is literally fluctuating frequencies of energy in a localized concentration of energy. The localized concentration of energy is the body and the energy field around the body. And these frequencies of energy that we hear in our own language, in English or whatever, these are the thoughts. So whatever happens as we just go about life, thoughts will always be there. So we're not trying to get rid of thought. It's just that we need to stop being interested in thought. Now, for instance, thought is always trying to keep you safe. That's what thought is doing. Thought in its proper department is just there to teach you how to walk, put one foot in front of another, or learn to drive until it becomes automatic, and then that's it. We need to drop it unless we're doing things like that. But because thought and the mind, sole intention is to keep us safe, it's constantly judging every single situation that happens. And how we hear judging is it's like it comes out of its own department. So it'll judge people all the time. So that's why we'll have a thought like, oh, that man looks so stupid in that hat. Now, if we're a really nice person, we'll think, oh, I shouldn't think that. Oh, never mind, but he's got really nice hair. And we'll try and do anything so that we don't appear as a bad person to ourselves. Actually, the moment we pay any attention to thought, we are expanding it and we're amplifying it, and then we're making it into a drama, and then that makes itself into a memory. And then we've become harmful. So to render ourselves harmless, all we need to do is just not take any notice. So the next time a thought comes that's maybe not a very nice thought, like that man looks silly in that hat, all we do is we just don't take any notice. We are no longer interested. We just drop it. When we become aware that thought is always working in a negative way, it's always looking at the past, it's always looking at the future, it's constantly judging and assessing and weighing things up. Once you really know that about thought, then we don't have to be a slave to it. We just let it go on its way. It's like imagining that you can hear bees buzzing around a honey pot, but you don't really need to tune in and listen to what they're buzzing about. So
Mandy, was there ever a time when you actually needed to be in that observation to understand the game that was going on to begin with? Because many times people just think that the thoughts are them. They're completely identified as that the thoughts are their selfhood. And so I'm wondering if what your experience was, did you need to go through that time of self-observation to understand that the thoughts were consistently derogatory and consistently trying to paint a black picture?
I did, you see, because, in Christian Science, this is all written about, and we would study this, but that's all we would do, study about it, talk about it. It's like in Christian Science, everybody knows that that's true, but it's like they're having to remember that truth and constantly write about it, read about it, pray about it, to keep knowing that. And this is where, in Self-Enquiry, and I really had to do this big times. I spent hours and hours and hours a day, that was just my choice. The world just became so unimportant to me. It's like it couldn't offer me anything anymore. And so I just got more and more into looking and observing. And as I did, that's when I started to notice everything that the mind did. And there was a deconstruction of this sense of identity that I'd been conditioned to believe in. Certainly, otherwise, we all do believe that our thoughts are us. And if you like, if I have any mission at all, it's to spend my entire life helping people to see that they are not their thoughts. Because the only difference between some great sage and an ordinary person on the street is that the great sage has literally just learnt to not be interested in thinking. They're just not paying attention to the thoughts. And everybody else is paying great attention. The only way that we can break through this conditioning is by actually looking to see that we are not our thoughts. So in the Ramana Maharshi way, self-inquiry just begins by, first of all, we just sit and we look within and we try and find where we are. So we might ask the question. Sometimes actually, who am I can be a bit confusing, but where am I found the best one is to actually try and look and try and find where you are. Can you see where you are? And when we really, and I urge everybody to do this over and over again, because it's only in that looking that we actually keep coming up against a sort of blank space, because we are beyond thought, we are beyond opinions, thought, imagination, history, memories. Every time that we make a drama out of a memory, then we fix it, you see. I'm going to give you an example to really make this clear in a sort of an everyday way. Last year, where was I? Oh, yes, I was at a friend's house, somebody I've known for years. And I know that in the past, I've known this lady to be a bit erratic, so she can be fine for the first few times you see her. And then every so often, she'll fly off the handle for no reason. It's all a bit unpredictable, really. Anyway, so I went round for lunch, and there was a whole lot of people, and I asked if I could have the salt. And anyway, she flew off the handle and got extremely angry, and don't ask me why. and then she got angry at me again because I think I wanted to help her. It got dark in the room and she was cooking, so I just thought I'll put the lamps on for her. And anyway, she thought this was a terrible thing to do. It doesn't matter really what the situation was, but the point was that she just started shouting at me and getting very angry. And obviously, whoever you are, there's a field that gets set up when somebody is raging at you. But the funny thing was, because of the self-inquiry, because of seeing that I am no one, and I could see that she was no one as well. So by that I mean is that I have looked and looked and looked to see where I can find Mandi Solk. And I came to see that there was no space and nowhere was there Mandi Solk. There is just, if you like, energy, life, spaciousness, pure being. So when I looked at this person being angry at me, and I could see a mouth moving and the eyes looking angry, the more that I saw that this couldn't possibly be real, because she is not the person she thinks she is. I know that, even if she doesn't know that. Then a sort of a melting happened, you see. There was a kind of a melting, and it was seen through. Even for her, it was like there was nowhere it could go. Because if somebody's angry with somebody who isn't actually there, they don't get very far. You have to have a great sense of the personal and show that you're offended for somebody to actually offend you. If you're not offendable, then the person gives up trying, and they sort of the fire goes out of them, you see. So it was very interesting.
So that's one of the basic tenets of nonviolent action in terms of political action, and also nonviolent community. That's a huge thing that you just brought up there in terms of how to address the increasing violence in our culture. And I mean, the world is erupting in so much discontent and riots and all of this kind of thing, and people are so upset, and it's very hard not to react. But you're saying that when you connect with this infinite part of yourself and hold that space, you can weather the most sort of severe storms coming your way in a very neutral way. That's huge.
You can, and then sometimes, because everything in life can happen, and we never know what's going to happen, and emotions come up just the same for everybody. It's not that you suddenly don't feel things at all. In many ways, you feel them far more, because there's not a sense of a person trying to stop anything in the way. So if there was a feeling that tears wanted to come up, they'd just come up. They just wouldn't last very long, because there's not a feeling of being a person to sort of hold on to it. There's just the feeling of, I feel like crying. So crying happens, and then because there's nothing holding on to the crying, no particular thoughts, that it just dries up pretty quick, really. But the more that you see, I really do believe at first you really do have to practice it, because the conditioning that we are a person, that the person we are is our thoughts. The greatest error is I think, therefore I am. That's the greatest misconception. And to get through that conditioning that happens from the moment we're born and given a name, we have to undo that, and we can only undo that by looking. It's not that we need to spend months and years doing self-inquiry practice, because there comes a point where it doesn't hold water anymore, that the idea of being a person. It starts to lose its strength, and there becomes a switch over from thought dominance and very little presence to presence dominance and thoughts just in the background, not really being listened to. But when thought isn't really being listened to that much, you don't really suffer the feelings of guilt and anger. And because if people are being extremely aggressive or hostile, instead there's a huge compassion. I mean, like when Jesus said, "Forgive them, they know not what they do," what he's talking about is the fact that they really think they're a person, And the only way you can think you're a person is by absolutely believing every single thought and being very interested in all your thoughts. I mean, it's a huge addiction, is this interest in thoughts. We're interested in every single thought. And when we stop being so interested in thought, life just happens. I remember when I was married, my husband died quite a few years ago, but he was sort of, when I met him, I'm 58 now, and I met him when I was 29, and he was really, if you can say anybody's, I don't know, ahead. He seemed ahead of me. You know, he'd been a meditator for 14 years, and I hadn't even done any meditation at that point, not seriously. And anyway, one day he was upstairs, and he ran downstairs, and he said, "I was just doing my shoelaces. I was doing my shoelaces." So I said, "Well, great. What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, what I mean is, when I was doing my shoelaces, all I was doing was my shoelaces." And I realized, exactly what he meant. He meant that that's all he was doing. There was not a person doing shoelaces. Shoelaces were just being done because there was no thinking going on. It was just the shoelaces being done. So in Zen, they sometimes refer to this as mindfulness, and the practice that they would recommend is that whatever we're doing, we do it 100% and put all our attention into it. So if it's having a cup of tea, you'd be very mindful about the shape of the cup and how it feels in your hand and how much tea there is in it and how hot it is and the weight of it when you've drunk something out of it and then when you put it down again. And that's all very well and good, but again, that's really a very enforced thing. But when we start, everything's tied in, you see. When you start to see that you aren't this solid entity that you have believed yourself to be, there starts to be so much freedom from thinking after a while that you do find just organically more and more that whatever you are doing, you are just doing that. And so there's a relaxation in that. So if you're frying sausages, that's all you're doing. You're just frying sausages. If you're washing up, you're just washing up. And so there's just more ease, you see. And everybody can attain it. That's what I like about self-inquiry. If people really want to be free, then you can be. It's just wanting it. I wanted it passionately. I think it comes down to that.
Now, Mandi, what I'm understanding from what you're saying, when you say you're not a person, well, we all have different languaging, and they're only words, but I would say more, I'm not an ego identity, and to say all thoughts are bad, and so having no thoughts is good, it's been my experience that there's a deeper intelligence at the core of our being. It's very heart-based, it's very intuitive, that there is, I wouldn't call it thought, perhaps a deep knowing, a deep intelligence, a deep creativity, and we're not to, become sort of vegetative zombies in order to give up our minds to achieve this ideal state of enlightenment. I don't feel what we're really giving up is the mind control. It's actually the superego informing the ego of robotic behaviors that are serving actually authoritarian agendas that we're all mind controlled into, that this is not really our mind. I believe that we can take back our minds, that we don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. What would you say to that?
No, I did say at the beginning that it's not that thought is bad, it's just that our interest, our constant interest in it. I think that it's like I was saying, that when thought is sort of in the wrong department, then, it gets mixed up with ourselves as a body. And exactly what you said, an ego, sort of a sense of, that identity, whatever it was you said, I agreed with it, every word.
Ego identity, because isn't it true, for example, you've written several books. Well, what was the process you wrote the books with? You didn't
Oh no,
write...
I've only written one. I've only written one book.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
The Joy of
I
No
understand.
Self. Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Mandi, because this has been my process as well through my journey. And I'm at the place that you are as well, where thoughts, it's like the way I look at it is my mind or my brain is like a room with all open windows and doors. And so thoughts come in and out, and as you were speaking, I was picturing these little butterflies, as thoughts as butterflies, doop, 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 and they come floating by. And why would you want to capture one? You know, you could capture it and hang on to it and put it in a jar, and you know what I'm saying? And or you can just let them keep floating by. And I'm the same in my journey, it seems to be, as you, as where it's just this very deep sense of presence and being. So as you were saying, like frying the sausages or whatever you're doing, I'm the same way. It's like I'm not thinking about the sausages, and I'm not necessarily thinking about anything else. Although thoughts might come in and out, I don't grasp them, and I'm just very present in the moment. And it's not a zombie-like state. It's just I'm just right here, right now, and it's so peaceful and so spacious. And I know exactly what you're. Yes, I just love this conversation because I'm like, yes.
I love what you said about the butterflies. The butterflies, that's gorgeous. I'm sat here and on a desk with lots of little butterfly mirrors. So I love that. Yeah, I mean, exactly right. It's the opposite of a zombie state. It's definitely not. I mean, you see, it's not that we say that we want to get rid of all thought, because like you say, we couldn't do that anyway, and we wouldn't want to do that. It's just that for a time when you're inquiring, it's really quite important to just not be, to really drop your interest in thoughts and let thoughts work for you. When our thoughts work for us, I mean, it's blessed, isn't it? Because, we do need them to be, to create things and to know where we're going and write a timetable or do anything. Absolutely. And we love them. They are our friends. What stops it? It can sound like a zombie state, Sienna, and I know what you mean, because I've used to run this organization called Non-Duality North, and I used to have a lot of so-called non-duality teachers come over, and some of them, a lot of them stayed at my house. Believe me, a lot of them were a bit zombie-like, and that's what made me question it, because I used to talk like that too, and I just had to hold my hand up and say, hang on, this isn't it. And when I started to do self-inquiry, that's when I really saw through it, and exactly what you said there, Christina, and started to really see them like butterflies. I like that, and just become really, really present. But what happens is when you are just alive to the moment, it's like everything's so alive. Even
I was just going to say
let's
that.
say, yeah,
you're really alive. It's like, yeah,
you can feel everything, can't you? Like if you're drying your hands, suddenly the towel feels like amazing, or everything you touch to feel alive. It's like in Zen, they say, well, you can't put your hand in the same river twice. So you might go to the same river every single morning, put your hand in the water, but it's always fresh water. And when you're alive to this moment, just like you were saying, Christina, everything is more alive. And that's what awake is, because before you might have missed the way that towel felt on your hand. You might have missed the amount of colours in the bubbles in the washing up liquid. You might have missed listening to the crunch of your feet on the gravel when you're walking down a path. But now, when thoughts, you're not enslaved by thought anymore, then the aliveness of present moment living is seen. Even it doesn't even matter whether you think, well, I'm being present or I'm not being present. In fact, that doesn't matter. You just sort of become present.
Yes,
when
you just become present.
Yes. Yeah.
And the difference between, I love your difference between looking and seeking. That is just, you have an article on that on your blog, which I absolutely love. And I have a little saying which goes, that which you are seeking is you. Because that's what I found in my journey. I used to call myself a seeker, and I was always seeking answers and truth. And then I realized, oh, hang on, I'm just seeking me. It's all right here. But the difference between drinking the tea and the mindfulness and thinking about the cup, I mean, there you go. That's the, like, you're seeking in a moment, you're using your thoughts to fill the cup and really, I mean, that's the difference between just drinking the tea and allowing the sensation of, this is delicious, oh, it's warm, but you're not thinking necessarily. You're just experiencing the moment. You're experiencing life. There's a huge difference there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know.
Well, isn't this a lot of what women have always been doing, but we were demonized, suppressed, made bad and wrong? You know, it's really interesting because the dominator culture tried to quantify this and package it in religion. Even the Eastern religions, you know, that they're all about being and giving up the mind. And the tricky part is that they were still in authoritarian structure and a dogma, and which you finally broke free from, Mandi. And well, wait a minute, there's this whole other realm, and it's called me. And I really feel that this is female intelligence rising back onto the planet. And we haven't had words or languages because we weren't given any ability or rights to even speak what we knew is innately life. The joy of life and what's worth living and the thing that connects us all and all this great stuff. Anyway, I'm just rambling on here, but
no. I just find it. I don't know if I've got anything to say about the female intelligence thing, because I think that, you know, being itself is genderless, and you know, it's hard for me to sort of. Can't quite see that.
Okay, all right. Well, I believe that the being aspect of even the male or female psyche, the being, is part of the female aspect of the psyche, and it has been harnessed because it's also got all the juice. It's when you're feeling the joy of being alive, and both you and Christina and Elizabeth this morning are expressing so much of that joy. And this is what everybody wants, is the joy of being alive. And you are, you know, the poster child for how to arrive at that by peeling away all of this, what I would call the dominator culture programming that tries to say, no, we're it, we have it, we know, and it's empty, hollow, and enslaving. There's this whole other realm, and it really hasn't been defined. It feels like you've gone through so many things to peel back all these supposed definitions and paths, and that really were limiting. And I use strong language, but vampirizing the life force. And so it's hard to talk about these things. I mean, you do a beautiful job of it, because I think it's one of the most hard things to talk about. Because of course, when we talk, we're using our minds. We need to go to break for a few short minutes, Mandi, and then we're going to come back with a second hour. I know that we haven't even begun to talk about a lot of the parts of your journey that are happening right now, and I'm very, very interested to discuss more points with you. So give us a moment out here, and we will resume with hour 2 with Mandi Solk. Thank you.
Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Welcome back to Shadowland Voyagers. This is Elizabeth, and we're here with Mandi Solk tonight. I'm going to start off the second hour with reading a poem from her website called Who Am I? I am the light that wakes up the morning sky, and the dark that closes it down at night. I am the kite that flies on a windy day, and also the wind that causes the play. I am the boy that's running with all his might, holding the cord that's guiding the flight. I am all that lives and moves and breathes, people, animals, oceans, trees. I am every human that's ever been known, and beyond the body, flesh and bone. I am every thought that shocks or surprises, and every emotion that arises. I am love and anger, joy and fear, passion and peace, or a fallen tear. I am beyond description or spoken word, and beyond seeing and cannot be heard. I am totally invisible, yet everything's seen, neither past or future, but have always been. I almost got a little tear there. that is quite moving. Did you write that yourself? From experience,
it kind of wrote it,
like.
sort of wrote itself, really. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Mandi, welcome back to Hour 2. And I think we're going to start and end this hour with you giving out information how people can contact you. And I know you have a book, The Joy of No Self, and you have a website. And what is your website, Mandi?
It's mandisolk.com.
Okay, Mandi, that was a little hard to hear. Could you give that again, please?
Yes, thanks. My website is www.mandisolk.com. So it's MANDI. Yes, sorry, and then it's S for sugar, OLK. .com, mandisolk.com.
Now, Mandi, do you do private sessions, or how would people get?
I do Skype sessions, which can be booked on the events page from my website, or people can just email me at mandi.solk@sky.com, and we can sort out a time for them. I also do satsangs, meetings, and also for people in England, I do one-to-one consultations in my home. Yep.
Now, also, I want to dive back into the broader discussion, but before I forget, I saw that you work with something called the assemblage point, which is interesting because I just heard about that this week, and now here it is again. And it looks to be very important work. Are you also working in that as well? And could you tell us a little about that?
I will. I'm really quite passionate about it. I discovered it. I came across it on a website in about 2004, and when I was looking at that website, I had what I think you call it chronic fatigue syndrome, and we call it ME. It's the same thing, chronic fatigue syndrome, and also there was a bit of depression and things like that. So I was looking for something to treat it, and I tried all sorts of therapies, and nothing really helped. And then I saw an advertisement about the assemblage point, and I got very intrigued. And sometimes some things just resonate with you, and it's just like it resonated straight away. It made so much sense to me that not only did I want to have it done, but I knew that I wanted to train. So I'll just explain briefly what it is. The assemblage point was written about for hundreds of years, mainly in shamanistic texts. But then in the 60s, there were these books by Carlos Castaneda about an anthropologist who met a shaman. And in some of these books, the assemblage point was referred to, and it's always been referred to as a whirling vortex in the human energy field where the life force literally assembles. And if it's in the wrong place, it can cause havoc with beings mentally, emotionally, physically. But if it's in the right place, which is very rarely in people, it can, well, the myth goes that to have a centered assemblage point is equates with enlightenment, because it, it brings about complete balance in a way that most people don't experience it. So Dr. John Whale was a man who just was passionate about finding out whether this existed, and then he spent the next 40 years researching it, and he also made high precision medical equipment, so he was the right man to make instruments that would actually show if this existed. So what it's supposed to be is that if you were to look down an electron microscope at a cell of a baby, just a newborn baby, you'd find that there was nothing but pulsating life force, and that life force gathers into this sort of whirling vortex, and it has its place from 0 to 16 years in the navel. But as you grow to about 16 years old, it should move to the center of the chest, and that's where it should reside. And if it doesn't, it can go to different parts of your mainly in the torso, and cause all sorts of problems. So I went to have it done, and I found it just amazing. Everything just changed for me. And the best way to imagine it is, if you imagine a bicycle wheel, the center of the wheel turns really slowly. The outside of the wheel goes really fast, and all these spokes come out from the center to the outside of the wheel. Well, for most people, where we get such a strong sense of identity is that every time something happens, we get very interested or emotionally involved in it. Like, oh, I shouldn't have said that to so-and-so. And then before we know it, we're out of our center and we're halfway down a spoke. And then before that happens, something goes wrong somewhere, or a relationship falls down, breaks up, and then we splattered on another spoke. Eventually in life, we get splattered all over the spokes of the wheel, and we can't find our way back to the center. We don't even know what the center feels like. And sometimes life gets so bad that we end up on the outside of the wheel, where it picks up all the leaves and the rubbish. And that's what happens in life. And when we're splattered all over the wheel of life, we have this very strong sense that we are our unhappiness, that we are our fears, our anger, and our anxieties. But when we have our assemblage point put back in the center, there's this feeling that there's almost a very clear seeing that there's no one at the center. Because if you aren't in touch anymore with all those feelings of fear, anxiety, and so forth, which has always defined you, then what are you? And when you look for yourself, we come back to looking, you cannot find a sense of a person anymore. And so this has a profound effect on people. And when I started running this organization, I talked about earlier, Non-Duality North, where I would invite non-duality speakers from all over the world, including Scott Killaby and Jeff Foster, to come and speak. A lot of the people that I got to come and attend were people who had been to see me to have their assemblage point done. So people who before weren't even in the slightest bit interested in anything like this, non-duality or anything like this, suddenly became very interested when they started to feel much more relaxed and much more centered within. So that's why I still practice it, really, because it really helps people to get an inkling of themselves as not being a person.
Now, do you do this on Skype? Yeah. Excuse me, Mandi. Can you do this in a Skype session remotely?
No, this is something that has to be done on the person, unfortunately. And at the moment, there's only a handful of us that have been trained. And the reason is that although it's been talked about in mythology for hundreds of years, it's only recently been proved. It's actually only been proved to have existed in the year 2000 on Dr. Angela Blaine, who lives in England and teaches everybody in the world to become an assemblage practitioner. And you know how things take such a long time to come through the general consciousness. Like if you think about acupuncture, it was probably 100 years later before anybody had ever heard of it. And it's the same with the assemblage point. To actually have a qualified practitioner who knows exactly where that assemblage point should go. There's really just, as I say, there's quite a few in Holland. I don't know if there's any in the States. There's there's a register of practitioners, but I can't remember.
So people cannot, through their own awareness, move their assemblage point themselves without the help of a practitioner?
It doesn't work like that, unfortunately, because it's the treatment is really strange. It's delivered by what's called the 3 shamanic blows. And you literally hit on the back a few times, and you're told to breathe in a certain way and hold your body in a certain way, it's a very precise act, but it has to be acted, on the person. Now, I'm not here to say if people don't have this done, they'll never. Definitely not. It's not true that if they don't have it done, they won't ever experience freedom or liberation. That's not true at all. You don't need to have this done. But where it's very helpful is for some people, it's so far away from their experience, just the idea of looking or being able to even sit quietly or just experience any sense of peace so that they could even start inquiring or meditating or whatever. So this is very, very a useful thing to do. But as I say, yes, at the moment, I'm here in England, and mind you, people have come from all over the world to have it done, but because it's quite amazing, really. That's why I'm passionate about it. I've just seen some incredible changes, and as I say, people who weren't even interested in seeing beyond the obvious suddenly do start to see beyond the obvious, and it's very lovely, it's very gratifying,
And this has nothing to do with chakras or kundalini, or does it?
No, nothing to do with that, no.
Interesting, because it is coming out more and more lately that people are feeling, when they connect with their authentic presence, a light or a love in the exact region that you're talking about.
Yes.
So it is possible, I would imagine, that with intention, if one knows to bring one's assemblage point back home, that, perhaps a little slamming against the wall. No, I'm kidding.
No, I wonder if it starts to balance out naturally through understanding. Like, for me personally, I've actually had to go back in and do like really intensive observation to see the kind of things that I was engaged, like the behaviors that were coming out, and how it was defiling my heart, the way that I was in relationship with others. And as I've been doing that, and I'm coming into this much more balanced place and able to see things before the response is acted out, and that kind of thing, there seems to be like this balancing of even my moods, clarity of thought, all kinds of stuff, and also this knowing of this divine essence within me. And I'm feeling that something about the assemblage point is balancing itself out. Do you think that that's possible, like as an organic process, as we start kind of cleaning out the trash, taking out the trash kind of thing? Do you think that it's possible that that's a natural adjustment, or is it something that, I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
I'd like to think it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
All I know from my experience is that, because I have treated quite a few hundreds of people now since 2004, and some people who have been, quite balanced and stuff. But I've really never seen a centered one before until they've had it done. I'd love to think that it could happen organically. And I'm not going to say that it can't. I've just not experienced it with people, But
I wonder if you could
a valid menu option.
Yeah, I wonder if you could go a little bit more into detail about the difference between that you felt personally between when from before you got the adjustment of the assemblage point and after, and maybe what the difference was more specifically.
Yes. Well, for me, even I mean, it's 2013 now, so all this kind of, kind of freedom that I talk about is really relatively recent, because in 2004 I was still, I can't remember exactly, but I might still have been involved in Christian Science and stuff, and I was still a big seeker. And I also really did suffer quite a bit from depression, and was taking, antidepressants, and had this ME situation. I also had characteristics that, quite egoic things, like being a bit over competitive, or needing to, just things that, weren't particularly pleasant characteristics, very judgmental, and things I didn't really like about myself, and it all just was bundled into depression and negative feelings, and a lot of shadow stuff, that stuff I would look at, stuff I wouldn't look at. And anyway, when I had this done, the first thing I noticed was that I felt incredible ease, and I felt like the sun had come out. I felt wonderful. Now that's just initially, and when I say initially, I'm really talking only for the first day. Now, after that, things became a bit more unclear. And after about a month or so, I started to wonder if what on earth was supposed to have happened, and if anything had happened. And then something just very slowly and naturally, very organically started to change fundamentally. I just stopped being depressed, and I got off the antidepressants, and my ME, chronic fatigue, I just got so much better. But also subtler things like being very judgmental, or needing to, push myself forward, or that competitive stuff, that all just abated. And it sounds silly, because it sounds like a little thing, but it was a big thing to me. That I went out with some friends to dinner, and there was a woman who was really bigging herself up, talking about all the different therapies she was trained in, and all the things she'd done. And all the things that she'd done, I'd done a lot of them too. And what I would have done, I'm ashamed to say, I would have had to have, said, oh, well, I've done that, I've done that. And I have an overpowering need to sort of say those things. And I just suddenly noticed that I was not even in the slightest bit interested in myself, or having to mention anything about it. I just didn't feel any need to speak about it. And in fact, I felt very generous towards her. I just felt, I'm so happy to let her have her time. She doesn't need to know anything about me. Now, this sounds so silly, but when you've been, when you've had a personality like I did, for all those years, it's an effort to be like that. It's an effort to push you forward, and to be so thoroughly unpleasant.
I understand that.
Yeah, it's a much bigger effort to be unpleasant than to not. That's for sure.
And the thing is that I just noticed more and more and more stuff falling away, just really naturally. And I've got another example that's really similar to that. And I'll just say it because it's quite indicative of nearly all the examples of all the people that come. So I've got a lovely ex-boyfriend, and we're very good friends, but he's always teasing me. And when I first trained to do this, you weren't allowed to charge. You just did it on your friends and stuff. So I moved his assemblage point, and then I didn't really ask him about it. And 2 months later, he came round to my house with a friend, John, and I was sort of washing up, and it's a big sort of open plan room. So I was washing up, and I just went over to him and I said, oh, do you remember that I moved your assemblage point 2 months ago? Have you noticed anything? And he went, no, like that, you see. And I went, oh, And I went back to my washing up, but I could hear them talking. And I heard him say to John, well, actually, there is something that does seem to have changed. He said, I meet a lot of people, yeah, because he was a composer. I meet a lot of people, and I always had the feeling that even though they were nice to me, they didn't really like me. For some reason, I used to feel this. And he says, I have noticed that I haven't had that feeling for quite a while now. So I'm thinking to myself, and then I heard him say, and I've been very blocked creatively, but I have noticed that, for the last couple of months I've been composing non-stop, you see. So I'm thinking, aha! And then I heard him say, and I used to wake up with a feeling of depression every morning, and I have to admit that that's gone as well. So I came over to him and I said, oh, right then, so nothing's changed then, only everything. And we had a really good laugh. And he realized that when he looked back, just like everything had changed. And this is what people find, that it's so organic that they don't notice it at first. But when they look back on how they were and situations they've been in, they found that really deep-seated stuff has moved. So that happens all the time, you see. And another one is that anybody that's got panic attacks, it's really successful for panic attacks, and they never have another panic attack, and it really decreases anxiety. So there was one point, Elizabeth, when I thought, oh, this has fallen away. All this seeing, I thought, I don't need to do the assemblage point, and nobody's like coming for it anyway. So I just thought, oh, it's all dropped off, and that's fine. But then for some reason, people started coming again. And I thought, well, if they're showing up, then I'm obviously supposed to keep doing it,
Yeah.
and it goes like that, really. So I'm just doing it as long as people show up. And it does seem to be good. Yeah.
So to clarify, is this where the energy field of the body then is generated, and does it create like a toroidal, I cannot say that word, toroidal field around the body?
It's like this whirling vortex, and then like you rightly say, and it's sort of the energy goes around the whole of the body like an egg shape, and it just goes around the whole time and until you basically die. So, and the interesting thing is that, so it starts in the navel, which is also where the umbilical cord is. If you like, it's the area that is the giver of life. Mm. And then as you grow up to 16, it moves to the center of the chest. And that's where it should reside. But because of various tragedies and traumas, or the way we perceive these things in our life, it tends to come out, or it can even split, or it can even fragment. And then people often say, what they say matches where their assemblage point is. They'll say, I constantly feel divided, or I feel split, or I feel indecisive the whole time, or I just feel all over the place, or I feel very low, or I'm very hyper. And we always find that before they even tell us, they're describing exactly where their assemblage point is. And then when you do, when your body dies, apparently the assemblage point goes right back down over the months where you're approaching death, down back to the navel again. So it's like you come in through the navel and exit through the navel. So this is
the energy enters the body through there, or the body is generating the energy that's coming through that point? Is it which direction is it moving? In toward the body or out from the body?
It's kind of moving in and going out and coming in again.
That's like the torus field, like in. So yeah, that's really neat. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
This fits in perfectly with your self-inquiry process. In my opinion, there have to be other ways that we can access this. Otherwise, we're going to have to raise the money to bring you around the world and treat everybody who's ready for this on the planet, which is also a good option.
Yes, please.
We'll put that out there on our wish list. Spirit, let's manifest Mandi traveling the world, and everybody is ready for this. It's done. But in a way, while we wait for that money to arrive, it could be any moment. The things that you describe are actually also the benefits, it seems to me, of self-inquiry. and this awakening, and even the premise of Shadowland Voyagers, when one experiences all aspects of the self, making it conscious that the self has its own vortex of integration, that there's, I mean, this is what Jung showed in all the mandalas in the Red Book and such, that there is a vortex. The birth of the self, the process of individuation, is a vortex of re-owning the fragments of the self. And the more you own, the more you do your work, your shadow work of integrating all of the fragments and the upsets and the things that then it builds and builds, and the benefits, what you're describing, integration, peace of mind, balance, clarity, being able not to be reactive, all these things start to fall away. I mean, in a way, this is also what you're saying. Of course, you've had your assessment point, so we can't exactly know. But you're saying just your self-inquiry work alone is bringing these sorts of benefits. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that you've just said there, absolutely right. That bringing all these fragments together, and that's right. And you know, it's just and also in self-inquiry, that's right. You when you really look and you see that you aren't all these fragments, that you know that you aren't in these fragments either, you know, that there's, when you look, you're in that center anyway, kind of thing.
Exactly.
But, yeah, so this kind of work, like the work you're doing, really totally helps to bring this about. And you know, it's definitely something that is an aid to this, absolutely.
And it seems that this is the time, with all of the planetary alignments and connection to galactic center and the galactic plane, and all of the change of the age, the change of the eon, everything, the photon belt, the raise in frequency, that everything is aiding now into helping us birth this center. It's the center, the fractal of the central sun, of the Plerotha? I always get that name wrong. The center, the galactic center, that we are all a fractal of that, creatrix of all that is. And so we have this huge force. And the thing that is so impressive and resonates so deeply in your work is that the joy and the total change of energy state that this sort of self-inquiry has brought about in your life. And you and I'm going to go back to the beginning of the talk and some of your, when you say how awakening can get in the way, and that the truth of your near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, could not be sustained, and that there was a deadness that entered your being, and that you were only half cooked. And I'm wondering if we can bring that part of the discussion now, in the time we have, back online, because I think that this all ties together and really can help people navigate.
Yes. Well, I think that what can happen is, the reason that awakening lots of glimpses can get in the way is because when you have glimpses, you really sort of feel that you know, that you've seen, but these experiences, you know, don't last. But at the same time, then you haven't got any questions left. So, for instance, you could go and see, you know, a wonderful teacher, but you haven't got any questions to ask, and in a way it stops you seeking, because you think you know, but you don't know. It's much more subtle than that, because it's people are looking for this abiding in this state, but what they're not recognizing is there is only present moment. So abiding suggests that there's a future and a past, and if you can imagine yourself into abiding into it, and you're not abiding in it, you can feel that you've seen everything. I mean, if you can, like I did in my accident, you know, see through buildings, see through houses, see through people, and you see that it is all a dream. But when you come back, you know, that
seeing, it lasts as a memory, perhaps. You remember that you saw that, but the experience and full expression of that hasn't yet happened because you've not looked to see that you aren't. I mean, who is the one that even saw that? You see, inquiry just goes through all the levels of ego, and eventually dispersing each one as it goes. So I could say, I saw that, I saw through the houses, I saw through the people, but who is the I that is speaking? And in inquiry, and to me, which is, well, for me, I can only say for me, it's the only way I can see, the direct looking is how we see that we are not the person that we think we are. We are pure awareness. And until you can come to see what that is, yourself as pure awareness, then anything else is not it, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. But I had all these glimpses and I really thought I got it. But there was a kind of deadness and a kind of a detachment from life, which I get loads of letters from people who've been to see very famous non-duality teachers who I know very well, actually, and I'm not going to name, but people come away and they're depressed and they're detached because it's not enough to just stop because you've seen something. It's you need to go further.
You have to be it, right?
That's it.
Yeah, and there's something you say on your website, which I liked, was you are your are-ness, and being is free now. Just love that. And I'm also wondering if you could talk about, you've been through a lot of accidents. I know you just had another surgery. Can you address the idea of
you just broke up then, Christina. Can you just say that again? Can I address?
Sure. Can you address physical pain and the idea of suffering?
Yes. Well, it's this simple, really, that when pain happens, it's sort of seen that there's no sufferer there, that it's not personal. So it just, like, for instance, I've just had this hip replacement operation, and it's only been but 3.5 weeks since I've had it, and I'm already driving, walking, cleaning my own house and walking the dog and doing everything. And everybody that's seen me who's had their hips done, they've been amazed, you see. And it's not because, oh, I'm so special. It's not that. It's because somehow that in all pain, when there is no personal sufferer, do you know what I mean, Christina? There's no one to suffer. So suffering happens, but it's not made into a drama. Pain happens, but there's nobody in there suffering it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do, because you get to this place where you're identifying with this deeper part of yourself, just your consciousness. It's happening to the false identity, the ego, the body. But you know that that's just a temporary, it's not really who you are. So
that's it.
Yeah.
There's no sort of identifying with it. There's no sort of feeling that, poor me, I'm in pain. Oh, there's noticing that, oh, this hurts. And if it hurts, I'll take a painkiller or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it can't affect me. It's I've written a piece about this, and it's about the absence of the sufferer. So, suffering can't happen unless you think you are personally suffering. So
yeah,
then
you can apply that to anything in your life. That part of you can never be hurt. I mean, nothing terrible can happen to it. It only cannot happen to your personality, ego, physical body aspect. And as you said, when you had your near-death experience, you're still conscious, so you can leave your physical body, and there's not even a blink. You're pure consciousness always.
And also, there's just this pure feeling of that. You are this expanse. I mean, another thing that people can do is every time that you say, I mean, at first it seems like, oh, you have to practice it, but eventually it becomes it just becomes automatic, that every time you say I or me, where is that coming from? You know, is it coming from the I of pure consciousness, or is it coming from little mortal I? And that's just a good little habit to get into, because eventually, you know, people have sometimes found liberation like within 3 months from just always getting really clued up about it, you know, really coming from the I am, rather than coming from the I of the body am. And the more that you do that, you really feel this relationship to God. God is what we are. God is pure being, pure source. That there's this feeling of love, and that everything is perfectly all right. It's like, you know, this old thing that everybody is very good at about parking spaces. Like, you go somewhere where you know there's parking problems, but you need a parking space outside the door. And instead of thinking, well, oh yeah, it's going to be hard, you know, why not? Why shouldn't there be a parking space? I need it, so there will be. You know, it's just going through life knowing that all your needs are perfectly met, unless you, little you, get in the way of it, you know.
Yeah, I say that too, little me. And I think it's so funny you bring up parking places, because my husband, we have an ongoing joke, because everywhere we go, he's always like, oh, there's your parking spot. It's always right in front, because it's going to be there. I always have a parking spot.
I know, people are amazed, aren't they? And you can make the traffic lights be green, and, you know, really, I mean, you also, there's no you having control. It's more that, you're getting out the way, really. You're just getting out the way. And when you get out the way, that's getting rid of that personal you. Not even getting rid of it, it's the wrong expression, but, you know, just coming for the sense of what you are. Then only good things can happen, because source is utterly benign.
You get into this wonderful flow with life, and you realize that ultimately life wants to be in harmony, and so all you got to do is just get in harmony with life.
This is absolutely true, and this is another thing that quantum mechanics has pointed out, that when they look down these electron microscopes and they look at unhealthy cells, they're always moving towards harmony. Everything, like the life force, is always moving towards healing and harmony. That's all it will do, as long as we don't get in the way of that. That's right. Yeah. So, you know, the force is with us. And we are the force.
And we've had a number of different guests on the show, Steve Richards, George Kavasilis, others that talk about this spirit, or some call it the soul, that we're universal creators of light, that all of this mind control and trauma-based suppression through the dominator culture and the religions have so disempowered us from recognizing that the true universal God, Goddess, we are that. And therefore, we're actually accessing the ability to manifest what is appropriate to our being, what our needs are, that the universe is there to support us. But we have this huge power. We are that powerful to manifest what we wish as our intended outcome, moment by moment. And this is what the powers that be do not want us to know. And it's quite an extraordinary change of era to recognize this, and your work is helping us access this, peeling off all what isn't us, so that what truly is us gets a chance to shine, and your energy certainly radiates that kind of radiance, to be sure. We have a few minutes left, and so I'm going to ask you, Mandi, what haven't we talked about? I know you have quite a bit to say about gurus. I'd love to hear just a couple minutes about gurus, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I used to be a bit disparaging about gurus because, to be quite honest, I think there was a lot of arrogance in Mandi Solk a few years ago, and I used to say things that really I didn't know about. I mean, I even sort of was very disparaging about self-inquiry, having never really done any. I admit it now. Of course, now I've done it. It's just amazing, but and I can see that it leads to freedom, for everybody. And but gurus was another thing, and I saw people being very devotional with gurus. And I think what it is that what bothered me, and it doesn't bother me anymore, but it's just what people do is sometimes they mix what the guru is talking about, the central message, with the guru themselves. And so I used to think that when people change their names from their given names to, particularly to Indian names, if they're Westerners, or dress up in guru clothes, I used to sort of feel a bit disparaging about that, because I didn't know why they felt they had to. But then I've come to absolutely really love the words and the messages of people like Papaji and Mooji. And if you like, they sit on a seat in front of lots of people and kind of dress in that way, but I mean, I think Mooji's absolutely wonderful, and everybody has a different way of delivering this message. I mean, I am very down to earth, and I could never see myself, delivering this message except just as I am. But it's so that's why I wrote a rather disparaging. I think I wrote a comic poem in my book called "Oh, to be a Guru Now That April's Here" or something, which was a bit of a jokey way of looking at gurus. But I mean, what's wonderful is that there are all these different teachers for different ears, because to really make judgments about any of these people is a mistake. Everybody needs to hear it the way they needed to hear it. Maybe I wouldn't have understood the non-dual message years ago, and I still needed to go through, the whole Buddhism, Zen thing and all of that. So I really don't have these judgments in that way anymore.
Don't you find you go from the seeker, right, and hearing other people's messages and their truth, and taking what works and applying that to your own life and having your own experiences, and then you get to this place where you're letting go of all the seeking, you become, like you said, the looker, and you realize you're your own guru. And then you can listen to other people's information and see the beauty in it, and it's like, well, I don't have to believe it. It's interesting, and that's the wisdom they're sharing from their experience, but it doesn't necessarily have to relate to me. I don't even necessarily have to believe it, but I can be open to other people's perspectives, and maybe at some point it will resonate and help me understand my own life better. But yeah, letting go of looking outside of ourselves for gurus and seeing ourselves as having the wisdom within.
Absolutely. I always say to everybody, the only teacher you should listen to is the teacher within. Always. You always come back to that, because every answer that you could possibly want, if you get quiet enough, it's all there. It comes from source. If you just remain quiet. There's a lovely little video by just called Silence. It's only about 10 minutes. It's absolutely beautiful. And we access that in a teacher from doing that. But you're absolutely right. People put things in different ways, and they are interesting. And when we're open to them, we might just hear a lovely way of describing something, that is so much better than, the way that I would have described it or something.
I was just going to say, the way you describe it, to me, sounds so beautiful, and it's such a refreshing way of hearing the way you speak. But, of course, you wouldn't say that necessarily like you just did about yourself. So it is wonderful that we can hear the people sharing their wisdom. Like you said, Mooji, too. I really love Mooji. I think he's just a beautiful being with a wonderful message. But to me, it's like I love listening to music, and I also love listening to people share their perspectives. It's a different kind of music to my ears. Maybe music to my heart is a better way of putting it.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
And so here at Shadowland Voyagers soon, audience, we're going to ask you to step up and join us on the radio to speak your wisdom and to have your 15 minutes of being our guru here, because there's a whole process of coming out of the closet. We've all had to do it, and it's going to be your turn soon, so stay tuned. I'm definitely looking for regular folks with deep understanding to come on and share their journey through the Shadowland. So I think we are in the time to ask for your information again, Mandi. How can people reach you, get hold of you, and about your book and your private sessions?
Okay. Well, the book's called The Joy of No Self, and that's published by Lulu. So if people go to my website, there's like a tab for lulu.com, but they can also get it on Amazon, definitely, The Joy of No Self. And then the website is just simply mandisolk.com. And I do Skype sessions, and if they go to the events page, they can see sessions that are advertised. But if there aren't any that is at the right date or time, they can just email me at mandi.solk@sky.com. And if they email me, we can just arrange a time together which suits them. And what else? And, I'll do meetings anywhere, but I'm a lady with not very big funds at the moment, so sometimes people might have to.
So we're going to manifest the Mandi Solk World Tour, because we all need our assemblage points brought back into our chest. So that's where our spirits are gathered here to say that Mandi's going to be bringing her message, her love, and all of her expertise to many more people in this coming years. So be it.
Can I just
say anything? Yes, absolutely.
I thank you, Sienna and Christina and Elizabeth, so much for inviting me, because I'm absolutely honoured to be invited, and you're such beautiful beings yourself, and the love that I feel from you is just tremendous, and it's totally reciprocated. So thank you very much indeed, you beautiful beings of light.
Oh, thank you, Mandi.
Thank you, Mandi. Thank you so much for joining us.
And all of you beautiful beings of light who are listening, your time is coming soon to be a voice on Shadowland Voyagers. If you're interested in coming onto the show, sharing your journey, looking at any particular topic, please visit a Shadowland forum, and there's a Shadowland Voyagers, it's shadowlandforum.com, and there's a Shadowland Voyage thread. Let us know, and I will personally get back to you. All right, good night, everybody. Be well, be yourselves, and know that you don't have to take it from anybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Plane crash 4 long years ago. Lost my hope, couldn't cope with my fear of news on the radio. But I've got a long red cape that's caught in the engine of a plane that's flying way too low.
I'm inviting you, come to ground zero willingly and face what you fear. Be willing to be acutely uncomfortable. Why not? Why not? Go to 0 point with it. Because you're spending so much energy fearing it. You're spending so much energy with fearing to hit, ground zero. So I'm inviting you, come to ground zero willingly. Tell the mind, throw your best punch. But what I'm going to do, I'm not going to grapple or struggle with you. I'm simply just going to be here like we're here now, quiet, observing. But I'm not writing a report. So I don't want the journalist. Just look. It's as though you exist through your eyes only. You're just to look. Don't participate, just look. And face what you fear. Because unless you touch that point, it will keep on repeating itself, you see. It will always come and shake the finger in front of you and So why not just see what happened? A tremendous amount of energy is spent to try and prevent a calamity that you imagine is going to happen. A lot of energy goes into this, you see. So invite it. Open the door to it. So many years ago, a little boy, young man, 17 years old, 16 years old, had an experience that he was going to die. He was going to die. He felt it so strongly, and he was alone. He was sitting in his uncle's room. Felt, I'm going to die. And he didn't call the doctor. He didn't shout for his uncle. He had a sensation, a feeling inside him. If I'm going to die, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it. I want to watch the moment when the lights go out. So I'm going to help death. So he went in the middle of the room and stretched himself out like a corpse, because he'd seen many corpses before. He stretched himself out and waited for death to happen. And he could feel all types of strange energies moving in the body. But he was not backing out. And he came to a certain point of seeing that whatever is going to happen to the body, there's something here which is totally unaffected by all of this. And death did not come. And that boy became well known in the world all over. His name was Ramana Maharshi. You have your moment as well too. You have your moment to face what it is that you're afraid of. You're not made of less noble substance than Ramana. Sometimes each person, like Christ, you have to spend your 40 days in the wilderness. Now everything is fast. We can't even spend 4 hours there. To look and see what it is that's burning for you, what it is that's burning, and not run. Don't hide under the bed. Here you say, okay, come, let me see what it is. Because if I don't take the opportunity to look at what it is, I may be frightened for the rest of my life. And then at a certain point when you've seen it, then you can begin to ignore it. Because you've seen what it is. You know who is knocking at the door.